Good afternoon, everyone. Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to today's class. It's the Winsor & Newton's Hello Gorgeous class. Hi, my name is Tim DePack, and I am from Winsor & Newton. I'll be your moderator today. I am being joined today by Mandy Peltier, who will be your artist instructor for today's class. And Mandy will be taking you through today's class by providing information about the products that are being used in this class and showing you how to perform some of her favorite watercolor painting techniques and creating these gorgeous gourds using the Winsor & Newton Cotman Watercolor Sketcher Box set. She will also give you a sneak peek at some of her upcoming classes, and I'll provide the link for you for those classes if you wish to sign up in the chat on the side. Before we begin, for those of you who print out the sketches for the project, we will drop that link in the chat for you as well to follow along. And also upon completion of the class, you'll receive a survey in your email inbox. Please let us know your thoughts of the class, how we did, and if there are any particular topics you'd like to see Mandy perform in the future during one of her classes. Finally, I'd like to let everybody know that the class is being recorded and will be available 24 hours after the class is ended. It can be found on the michaels.com or Michaels YouTube channel. Along with the replay, you'll find the link for the download of the sketch and the instructions, and we'll provide that link for you in the chat as well. As we are about to begin the class, please feel free to follow along with and paint with Mandy, or sit back and relax and enjoy the class, and then you can watch the replay at a later date to complete the project. Without that further being said, I am going to pass it on to Mandy.
Hi, everyone. It's great to be back with you all today. Elephant in the room, you might be wondering why my face is painted. If you were here last week, you already know why, but if you weren't here last week, I'll fill you in. So on October 21st, I will actually be teaching a face painting class for the company Snazaroo, and Snazaroo is owned by the same parent company as Winsor & Newton Cole Art. So that's going to be on a Thursday night at 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. And it's going to be a family affair for me because all three of my kids are going to be involved and two of their friends. So it's going to be a lot of fun. So I hope you'll be there for that. And the link is live. Last week it wasn't yet, but it is on the Michaels website now. So you can sign up for it at this point. So, but enough about that. I'm going to go ahead and share my other camera so we can get started on today's project. All right, so I always start with an overhead view just so you can quickly make sure you have everything you need to be successful for this project. We will be using the Sketchers Pocket set. It's the set I've been using in all my classes this year. Paper towels for blotting your brush, a glass of water, an artist palette. We will be mixing 7 colors today. So I have a palette that holds exactly 7 colors. And we're going to be mixing colors a little bit different than how I've mixed them in my previous class. And you'll hear about that in just a minute. And then we're using 2 brushes today. We're using a number 4 round and a number 8 round. This is the first time I've used a number 8. So you may not have a number 8. Use a 6 if you have a 6. You could try a 10 if you have a 10, but I'll be using the 8 to paint on the gourds. The 4 is really just to mix our colors with, because the 8 is a little big to mix colors with, at least for my taste. And then a graphite pencil and an eraser just for transferring the outline if you haven't already done that prior to class. And this is the project. Hello, GOURD-geous. I love that saying, but there's a lot of cute witty sayings involving gourds, so you can put whatever you want along the bottom. We will be painting on the lettering today. So in August, I believe I taught a loose farmers market vegetable class, and this is sort of a fall take on that class. So all of these gourds use a similar loose technique. So if you enjoy this class and you didn't take the vegetable fall or farmers market class, go onto the Michael Store YouTube channel and look for that class, and you can watch it and take it. You go to my website too, mandypeltier.com. I have all my previous classes embedded on my website, so you can always watch them and download what you need from there also. Okay, so we're going to get started today by transferring the outline. So I'm going to scooch a few things aside other than what I need to draw the outline. And if you've taken my classes before, you know that I really like to have the outline that was provided as a download when you signed up for this class to follow rather than the finished design, but I can try and scooch some things over and for the most part squeeze all 3 of them into the camera here. But I'm going to actually start with the lettering because that way I can better gauge where to put the gourds. So on the bottom, I'm just going to follow what I see on my outline, and I'm going to start with my H and just kind of work my way around. Now, you don't have to use my lettering. You can use your own handwriting, or if you're really into lettering, you may have a particular font that you like. You obviously don't have to copy this exactly. And like I said at the beginning, you can always do your own witty little gourd saying if you want. I think the witty sayings are just sort of cute and fun for the falls. And then I'm putting gourd in uppercase letters just so it sort of stands out a little bit since we're doing a play on words. I am a big dork when it comes to play on words and jokes that use a play on word. Play on words, I think it's fun. So, all right. And then after we do the lettering, we'll sort of work counterclockwise around and draw all the gourds. Make sure I'm not spelling just wrong. To think about it. Exclamation point. All right, so there's the lettering. And so I'm going to start with this upper left gourd, and I'm going to start on the left edge where we're going to have a small arch and then a much larger arch. And then we're going to try and mirror that on the other side. So I'm going to start sort of on the left side here, just sort of kind of gauge where to place my graphite lines and just do a small arch and then a bigger arch. I'm going to sort of round the bottom, and I'm going to do the best I can to mirror that on the other side and then do another small arch on the right. Now, the middle of this gourd has another 2 set of curved lines that mirror each other. So I'm going to do the same thing. Just the far left of these middle 2 lines will sort of mirror the left edge, and the right one will sort of mirror the right edge, or not mirror, be parallel to, but they'll mirror each other together. So I'm going to do another sort of partial curved line or small curved line, and then another large one. So these are going to serve sort of as the indentations for this particular gourd. And we kind of follow that process on a couple of the gourds. So this sort of sets us up for success in drawing a couple of the other gourds we'll be painting today. And then I'll go ahead and do the stem here. So just kind of bring it to a point and then back down and around. Okay, and then we'll do the one that I think sort of looks like a beach ball next. So just kind of draw a circle that's about the same diameter as what we see on the outline. And I do always recommend that you transfer your outline before class. I find that those who do generally can follow along with me a little better. And I don't know if it's because maybe you feel a little less stressed because you're not trying to keep up with me in sketching or what. But if you are capable or you're able or you have the time to print out the outline and then transfer it before class by freehanding it or tracing it, I definitely recommend that. And then I'm going to draw another smaller, I guess it's more of an oval, sort of middle top, which is where the stem would be. And then I'm going to just make several arches. So the left side, they're going to all go the same direction. And then the right side, they're going to go the opposite direction. So I'll start with the middle here where I'm going to draw a curved line and then one that mirrors it on the other side. And this will be the widest striping, if you will, because we want to sort of get them smaller and smaller so that we give the perspective of looking at it from sort of slightly from the top, but not exactly top down or from just a straight on view, sort of slightly looking down, but also looking straight at it. All right, so I'm going to make some curved lines to the left, kind of work my way around. And then I might go back to the right here and make some more. So we're just making some curved lines to make some stripes. And when we get to the top, the very top stripe kind of needs to be straight on from the stem to give the right perspective, and it's going to be pretty skinny. And then we'll have a couple that maybe are just slightly wider, but still pretty skinny just to the left and the right of that. And then another thing I would encourage you to do is just with your pencil, just make sure you do have enough for every other. So to make sure that you'll be painting on every other and that it matches up. So that's good. I'm good. You'll just want to make sure you have enough on there that you won't have 2 stripes that are either going to be the color of the paper or 2 stripes that will be green. So, all right. And then we're going to draw on this mini pumpkin, which is technically a gourd. So I'm going to go ahead and start with the segments. I'm going to actually draw, I think, a circle to start for the pumpkin, just a real loose circle. And then I'll kind of turn that into segments. So I'll start with this first one. So this is not a perfect circle like the one we just drew. We do want sort of the segments to be distinct from each other at the bottom. And then we'll draw the side ones, but drawing the circle first just sort of helps set me up for success. And then I'll go ahead and do the stem. Sort of bring that up to a point as well. Okay. And then lower left, this is sort of the knobby or the warty gourd. I think those sort of gourds are really fun. So it's neat that we get to do a loose one of those today. And it has a very similar shape to the upper left one. It's just maybe more of a subtle curve along the top than this one here. So I'm just going to start on the left and draw a slight arch and then make it a little fatter at the bottom. And then just try to mirror it around. Think of a butternut squash when you're kind of drawing this one. It's sort of the shape of a butternut squash. And this one also has some indentations running through the squash. It has 2 through the middle, just like the upper left one. So we'll start with those. Same thing, you're going to draw sort of a couple arches and you're going to mirror the left to the right. But then this one, we also have a couple more. We have one on the left and we have one on the right. And then we'll do the stem again. The stem is the same as the others, just sort of make it fatter on the bottom and then nice and skinny on the top. And then the last thing we'll want to do to this one is draw on some warts or knobs or knots along the side of the gourd. You can put them wherever you want. You can put however many you want. So I just sort of make wavy, almost complete ovals, but I have it touch against the edge of the squash here. Just sort of make them look knobby. What would be the proper term there? I don't know, but you know what I'm saying, right? Okay. And then the last one is a crook neck squash. So this has sort of a curved neck. And so I'm going to start with that. I'm going to make it skinny. It's maybe 1/4 of an inch to 1/2 inch wide. I'm going to make it so it's hopefully the same length or the same width all throughout. And then I will make the bottom part where I make sort of 2 arches that mirror each other. A lot of mirroring in this one, but it doesn't have to look perfect. Some things you want the sides to mirror each other perfectly because these are sort of loose and fun. We don't necessarily have, it doesn't have to be perfect. All right. And then we'll draw just a little, I'm going to say it's like a stem on the very tip of the gourd. And then the tip of the crook neck, I'm going to make sort of a dashed broken line to do that as well, sort of when you break it off from the stem. All right, so there's our outline. I know that was fast. If this went a little fast for you, you can try and finish up here as we start mixing our colors, or you can always rewatch this class tomorrow when it's posted to the Michael Storb YouTube channel and pause as needed to better keep up. But I'm gonna keep chugging along since we only have an hour together. And the next thing we're going to do is mix our 7 colors. So I'm actually gonna set this aside for a second. I'm going to pull down what I need to mix our colors. All right, so I had mentioned we're going to mix colors just a little bit differently today than what I normally have in my classes. And I also have my number 4 brush. And the very first thing I'm going to do is put my brush in the water and swoosh it around to help those bristles absorb the water. It also will release any paint that's dried on my brush from my last use if I didn't thoroughly clean it when I was done. And then I'm going to use my number 4 brush as if it were a spoon. And I'm going to place 3 scoops of water into all 7 wells on my palette, just like this. 1, 2, 3. And I'm going to go all the way around and do that to each well. And this will just give us some clean water to mix our dry half pans into. And I think it also just allows you at home to better duplicate what I'm doing over the camera and to achieve the same paint consistency that I'm doing here at my house. All right, so I have 3 scoops of water in each one. And so this is what's different about painting or mixing our colors today. So usually when we mix a color, we clean our brush when we're done and then mix the next color and clean our brush. And so we clean our brush in between each new color. We are going to do that with the very first paint color we mix, but then after that, we're actually going to stir whatever color is still on our brush into the next well on our palette and then mix the next color. So whatever's on our brush from the previous color is going to influence the next color. So this is just going to be maybe a shortcut way to getting the right colors that we need and kind of also create some more cohesive, consistent, harmonious palette. All right, so the first color we're going to mix is like a tan or khaki color. So we're going to start with one pass of yellow ochre. And when I say a pass, I mean, I'm going to take my wet brush. I'm going to run it over, not too daintily. I'm just kind of running it into the yellow ochre half pan a handful of times. And you can see how the brush picks up that yellow ochre color. And I'm going to stir it into the first well in my palette. And I'm going to wipe my brush on the edge of the palette a couple times to release excess paint. And that's a pass. It's usually sped up and a little bit quicker than that. I don't really think too hard about it. And we're going to add to the yellow ochre 4 passes or so of Chinese white. So usually I would clean my brush in between each Chinese white pass. I'm not going to do that today. So I'm just going to run my brush into the Chinese white 4 times or so, do 4 passes, and it's going to lighten up the yellow ochre quite a bit and give us more of a soft khaki or tan looking color. We want our paint mixtures to be still transparent looking and easy to apply onto the paper, but to be really nice and pigmented. So this is the first color. It's the khaki or tan color. Now just know, because I didn't clean my brush in between each pass of Chinese white, some of this yellow ochre is now on top of my white half pan. And so if I don't clean it at some point, it will influence whatever color I try to mix with the white. So you can clean it by taking a damp paper towel and just running it over. You can clean it with your brush. I can just show you real quick right now because we are cleaning our brush after this color. You can just run your wet brush over it and that will clean it as well. But go ahead and clean your brush now. But this is the last time I want you to put your brush in the water in between mixing colors. We're not going to do it for any of the other colors we mix today. So the next color we're going to mix is just yellow. It's going to be cadmium yellow. And we're going to do 5 or 6 passes of cadmium yellow into the next well on your palette, but do not place your brush into the water after you're done mixing your cadmium yellow. I'll show you what we're going to do. All right, so 5 or 6 passes. I say 5 or 6 because depending on the pressure you use when you run your brush into the half pan, you may need an extra pass than someone else in order to get a really nice pigmented mixture. We want at least equal paint to water ratio, but even slightly more is fine. So after you've mixed your passes with the yellow or the cadmium yellow, the yellow that's left on your brush, go ahead and stir that into the next well on your palette. And that's already going to add some yellow to the next well in your palette by just sort of cleaning your brush in the next well, if you will. And then we're going to add to that 4 passes of cadmium red pale hue, which is the orange on your palette. So I'm going to do 4 passes of the cadmium red pale hue. And so the cadmium red pale hue, maybe you've already noticed this, maybe you haven't. It's actually kind of more of a red orange. So putting the yellow base into this well is kind of going to make this cadmium red pale hue look like a more of a natural looking orange. You can always add a touch more yellow in there if you want, but that's sort of why we added the yellow first. It just sort of influences and tones down the cadmium red pale hue to look more like a true orange. I'll give you all a second here to mix these paint colors. I know I probably do it a lot faster than you all at home, so I'll give you just a second here. But don't clean your brush. When you are done mixing your orange, take your brush and just stir what's left of the orange on into the next well of your palette. And into the 4th well that you stir your orange into, we're going to mix what I'm calling a pumpkin orange. And so we're going to add to this orange burnt sienna, which is on the 2nd row, 3rd from the right. It's the more reddish orange brown of the 2 browns in this set. And so just as we did with the last well, we're going to add 4 passes or so of the burnt sienna. And the burnt sienna and the orange mixed together just sort of give us more of a pumpkin-y orange. There's a few different ways to mix a pumpkin orange in the Sketchers Pocket Box set, and this is one way here. And then just as we've done, don't clean your brush. When you're done mixing your pumpkin orange, just go ahead and stir your brush into the next well in your palette. And the next well in our palette is going to be burnt umber. So we're just going to be adding burnt umber to the burnt sienna at 4 passes or so, 5 if you need. This is also keeping our water pretty clean, isn't it? Because there's not as much cleaning of our brush like there usually is. I mean, there will be soon, but there's not right now. All right. And then when you're done with burnt umber, what's on your brush, stir into the next well in your palette. And we're almost there. And into the well that you stirred the brown paint into, we're actually going to add 1 more pass of burnt umber to it. So add 1 more pass of burnt umber to the 6th well in your palette. So it's going to look like we have 2 burnt umbers because right now we do. But into the one we're working on right now, we're going to add to those, what I'm going to call 2 passes of burnt umber with what we stirred with our brush and then the extra pass we did. We're going to add to it 3 passes or so of Viridian hue, which is bottom row, far left. And this is going to create a really dark green, like an olive green, maybe like a hunter green. It's going to create, or even like a khaki kind of dark green. So add like 3 passes or so to give us a really pretty dark green. And then just as we've done, take what's left on your brush and stir it into that last well on your palette. I'll give you a second here. I know I'm moving fast. And all we're going to add to the last well is just more Viridian hue, but it's going to look like a much lighter green because there's not as much burnt umber in it. So it's just the ratio of green versus burnt umber. The darker green has a lot more burnt umber in it. This last one just is pretty much just Viridian hue with maybe just a touch of burnt umber. So I know this was kind of a unique way to mix colors, and it would take some forethought on your part to do this at home as you create your own art, but it can be a way just to save paint and even just be more conscientious in how you mix your colors and create a more harmonious palette. So we just have 7 colors here to work with, and we are ready to get going. So I am going to move this up and I'm going to pull this over. And I am going to I'm going to start with this one and then we'll move to this one and then the pumpkin. So we'll kind of work maybe not quite in a clockwise direction. But what we're going to do is we're going to do a lot to each one, but then towards the end of class, we're going to go back through and do a final touch to most of them because we're going to be doing wet into wet today, but there's also going to be a little bit of wet over dry. So I'll explain those techniques as we get to them, but we're going to use the number 8 brush at this point on for the rest of the class. And we haven't used the number 8 yet. So I'm going to go ahead and stick it in the water and swish it around, help those bristles absorb the water. I'm going to blot it a couple times on my paper towel. And we're going to start with this one, like I said, and we're going to use the tan color or the khaki color. So I'm going to put a little bit of that on my brush. And I'm going to start by applying it to the entire stem. So start by applying it to the entire stem. And it's okay if you leave a little bit of negative space. If you look at mine, you can see a little bit of the paper peeking through. You don't have to aim for full coverage here. I think especially when you're working on loose paintings, a little negative space is nice. I did fail to mention when I was going over the supplies that I today am using the Winsor & Newton student grade paper. So student grade paper is a little different from the professional paper. The professional paper is 100% cotton, whereas the student grade is 25% cotton and 75% cellulose fibers or just plant material fibers. And what that means is this paper absorbs the paint a little bit differently than professional paper does. And I actually like how the student grade paper absorbs paper when I'm working loosely more than I like how professional paper does. When you need a lot of layers and you need the paper to absorb paint really evenly and you just need a lot of, I guess, flexibility, professional paper is my go-to. But actually with loose stuff, I do like using the student grade. So that's why I'm using the student grade today, just in case you're wondering. I just like how the paper lends itself to a loose look. And so after you paint on the stem, I'm going to put some more of that tan or khaki on my brush. And I'm going to outline the entire left edge of this particular gourd, the entire left edge, and I'm going to also apply it to the entire right edge. And then I'll show you on the back of my brush so you'll know, you can follow along here. So I had mentioned these two middle indentations or indentations. So we kind of want them to look settled in. So I am actually going to apply paint. So this far left, or this left one here, I'm going to apply paint just to the left of that line. But to the one here on the right, I'm going to apply it just to the right of it. And that will just sort of help it look a little more set in to the paper if I'm applying it just to the left and just to the right versus right over it. And I'll hold this up when I'm done so you can see. And then I'm also just going to apply just a little bit right through the middle indentation. So I'll hold that up so you can see. So I applied it to the left edge, the right edge, just to the left of the middle left indentation, just to the right of the middle right indentation, and then right through the middle. And then I have shown this in some of my previous classes where to create a diluted version of this color, what I'm going to do is place my brush in my water glass for just 1 second, and then wipe my brush several times on the edge of my water glass container. And I'm just going to loosely fill in the white of what's left on my paper. I'm just going to take it and just sort of roughly fill it in, and that will sort of help softly transition the ivory or the khaki color that's on the paper, and also create like a softer ivory color where I apply the diluted version of it. And then this is important. We're going to be working wet over wet here. So what I'm going to do now, while this water is all still wet, is I'm going to place the tip of my brush, I haven't even blotted or cleaned it, into the lighter of the two greens, just the tip of my brush. And through these two middle indentations, I'm just going to place little dots right over the indentation, just to the left of the indentation, just sort of randomly over that indentation. And I'm going to do it to both of them. And you want the wet into wet because you kind of want to create little paint blooms, as you can see as I hold it up here, for it to kind of, and you can see right here, it already has absorbed the paper. So they're a little more harsh looking, and that's okay. But we just want as many of them as possible to look kind of loose. And then I'm just going to blot my brush. I'm not even going to clean it. And then as soon as I apply the lighter green, I'm going to then dip my brush into the darker green, and I'm going to go over the green with a little bit of the dark green. I may not apply as much as the dark green as what I did the lighter green, but as much as you want is fine. And just go over the indentations with that darker green. And then I'm also going to apply the dark green, just a few stripes following the curve of the stem to the stem. As many as you want, but I want some of that cream or khaki color still kind of showing. So just a few stripes, and maybe I'll draw a line right on the bottom. So hold that up so you can see. So these are quick projects. It's not something you want to think too hard about. You'll just sort of want to move fairly quickly and get her done, if you will. But this is all we're going to do to this one for now. And when this dries, we'll come back in and we'll just make a couple adjustments. But we're ready to move on to this one now, the one that I think looks a little bit like a beach ball. So I'm going to clean my brush and blot it. And I'm going to load my brush up with the ivory or khaki color. I'm going to put some on my brush here. And I'm going to apply it to the entire gourd. And I'm going to try and cover the entire gourd with what's on my brush, because I want a thin, even layer of this khaki color. And you can, if you run out, what you can even do is just put your brush in the water for a second and then just keep painting it on. And that should help you stretch it to the whole thing. We just want a nice thin coat of it, and you'll see why in a second here. Because we're going to be adding the dark green to every other stripe. And so if we had a lot of the khaki color on this gourd, when we go to apply the dark green, it's going to really bleed out into all the stripes. And we kind of want them to be constrained for the most part to the stripe that's being added to. So we're kind of helping that happen by just applying enough of the ivory to the gourd versus way too much. All right, so clean my brush and blot it. And now what I'm going to do is every other stripe, I'm going to start with the big one in the middle and then work around every other one. I'm going to just place some dashes and dots and just be sort of random with how I place the dark green. If you look at my finished example, I'm not trying to go for full coverage. I'm not thinking too hard about it, but I'm going to put some dark green on my brush. And I'm going to start with this first one here. I'm just going to place some dots and dashes to that first stripe, just like that. And I'm going to do that to every other, just dashes and dots. So I'm picking up my brush in between each dash or dot. And then we'll come back later and we'll apply a second coat of it that will look a little bit more defined than this first one. So just some dashes and dots. Some of it will be wet over dry because this paper absorbs the paint really fast, and some will be wet over wet, and there'll be some bloom action going on. That's okay. These are meant to be loose and imperfect. Effortless is how they're kind of supposed to look, just therapeutic. And if some of you have followed me or looked at my Instagram page, you'll see I started off as a very photorealistic artist, like very photorealistic. So loose and free doesn't necessarily come natural to me, but once you get there, it's so fun and it's so relaxing. So if it's hard for you to be loose and free and you really get caught up in the details, just try not to think about it, or even try painting with your non-dominant hand, and that might help you loosen up a little bit. And then I am going to put just a little bit of brown on my brush and just fill in that, that oval where the stem would be on that particular gourd. All right, then you can clean your brush after that and blot it on a paper towel. And then we'll work on the gourd that looks like a mini pumpkin. And I'm going to start first by putting the lighter green, or the more true looking green, just a little bit of my brush, and I'm just going to paint on the stem. I want just enough green on my brush to cover the stem. I don't want there to be an excess of paint. All right. I'm just going to paint that on to the stem, and then you can clean your brush because we don't want the green to influence the orange. And then we're going to sort of paint on this, excuse me, miniature gourd using the same sort of technique we did with this one, only we're not going to do the far left edge and the far right edge. We're just going to be focusing on the indentation. So we're going to start with the cadmium red pale hue, or the orange. Put some of that on your brush. And so not the far left edge, but the next curved line to the right of it, I'm going to apply this orange color just to the left of that curved line, because we want to create a little bit of an indentation here. So just to the left. And then we're going to do just to the left of the next one. But then for the next two, we're going to flip and do just to the right. So I'm going to do just to the right of the next one, and just to the right of the one after that. And I'm also going to place just a little bit of orange right through the middle of that main center segment. And then just as we did with the first upper left gourd, I'm going to place my brush in the water for just 1 second, not even a second. I'm going to wipe my brush a few times on the edge of the rim, and then I'm going to use that diluted version of orange to sort of fill in the white that is still on this pumpkin. And then that's all we're going to do for now, because when this layer dries, we'll go back over it with that pumpkin-y orange color to sort of bring out some definition and finish it up. But even that looks pretty cool, doesn't it? Just that little bit that we did, I think that looks pretty cool. And then we'll also add a few dark green stripes to the main stem, but we'll do that after this layer has sort of dried. So as you can see, this is pretty quick. These aren't slow, take your time, super detailed, but still a satisfying result. Right, so the next one I think we'll do, and really it's not fair, it's only because I'm right-handed, so we're gonna work left to right. So we'll do this knobby warty gourd next, and we're gonna start with the yellow on this gourd. So I'm gonna put some yellow on my brush, and I'm going to apply it to the whole gourd, even to the stem. So I might turn this upside down so I can just have better control here. And I'm just gonna apply it to the whole gourd, even to the warts on the side of the gourd. And you can, if you want to make this color stretch a little bit and get a few other values going on, you can, instead of putting more yellow on your brush, you can just dip your brush in the water for a second and then keep painting with a more diluted version of the yellow. But it looks like I loaded my brush enough that I'm going to be able to paint on this whole thing with just what's on my brush, which is good. But you can see the water dilutes the yellow a little bit towards this part, but that kind of creates a cool look, like a gradient, if you will, just from the water gradually diluting the yellow as I continue to use it. And I don't even need to blot my brush because I thoroughly exhausted what was on my brush by painting on that gourd. So after you've painted on this entire gourd, we're going to use the orange color again. We'll also use the pumpkin on this one, just not yet. That will be when we go back through and make some finishing touches. So I'm going to put a little bit of orange on my brush. And this time with this gourd and this gourd, we applied stripes just to the left or just to the right of an indentation. For this one, we will just apply them right over the indentations. And that's because we're going to do dots in a second, and that will sort of take care of helping it look kind of set down or having some depth. So I'm just going to apply the orange right over each indentation. And then with the tip of my number 8 brush, I'm also just going to loosely sort of outline the edges of the warts. Sort of loosely outline them with the tip of your brush. It can be kind of a broken line. It doesn't have to be a perfect solid line. Just sort of outline the edges. And then with the orange color too, you can just kind of make some jagged little wavy circles all throughout the I wanted to call the pumpkin, the gourd. Just using the tip of your brush again, just make some warts even on the gourd itself, just wherever you want. I'm just sort of waving my brush around as I make a circle shape to make them look kind of jagged and rough looking. I'm putting a lot on here, but you don't have to do as many as I'm doing. You can even just keep the warts on the side if you wanted, but that's what my sort of jagged circles look like close up. And then you can see how this gourd at the bottom sort of looks a little more orange than what I have right now. And how I did that is I'm just going to put the very tip of my brush into the orange. And then I'm just going to sort of loosely run it up and around all these circles I've drawn for the gourd shape. And I'm going to even dilute it a little bit on my brush. And I'm just going to sort of work it up towards the top of the gourd. Just sort of loosely working around all those circles I drew. And as this dries, it'll sort of create a soft orange color that kind of contrasts with the yellow we first applied. So that's what I mean. So I kind of worked around the circles I painted on, but I tried not to be really careful with it. I was just kind of loose and just sort of went for it, because when this dries and we go in with some of that pumpkin orange, we can always add a few more circles and even further define some of the circles we painted on with the orange. And then I am going to clean and blot my brush, and I'm just going to paint on a few stripes to the stem, just like I did on this upper left pumpkin with the dark green. I'm going to rotate my work here. Just a few lines to the stem. You still want some of that yellow to show through, and we will go back over that with some brown as well. But that's it for now on this one. So we're doing the wet on wet first, where you're adding wet paint over wet paint. And then in a second here, we'll just do final touch-ups with wet over dry. So go ahead and clean your brush. I want to show you something that is nice about this student grade paper too. It's easier to lift paint off this paper. So I have a little bit of orange here on this paper. I can take just water on my brush and just sort of run it over this paper or over that spot, and I can lift it 100% on this paper. Whereas with professional cotton paper, it's a little bit harder to lift the paint, but on the student grade, it is easy to get 100% lift by just taking a clean brush and running it over wherever you've applied paint where it doesn't belong. All right, so the last gourd is this crook neck squash. And basically the technique we're using is we're just going to be applying yellow stripes, and then the white stripes that are from the paper, we're gonna fill in with orange. So we're just gonna be applying basically yellow and orange stripes. And we're gonna start with the yellow color here. Put some of that on my brush. And I am going to apply that along the upper half of the crook neck part. Just along the upper half there. And I'm going to continue it along the right side. I'm going to add it to the entire left side. So we kind of have the whole right edging sort of defined with the yellow, the left curved part. And then I'm also going to place a stripe sort of through the middle, up to the neck part of the crook neck squash, if you will. That's sort of a tongue twister. Maybe I'll add just one more. So just, you just sort of want some stripes that sort of follow the curve of the crook neck, if you will. And so you can see we have some spots that are just paper because we're not fully covering this crook neck squash. We're just applying it with some yellow stripes, right? So now what I'm going to do, I'm not even going to clean my brush. I'm going to let the yellow on my brush influence what I add to it. I'm going to place just the tip of it into the orange, and I'm going to apply orange to what's left. You could always make adjustments and add more yellow if you want, but I'm going to apply orange to what's left on the crook neck part. And I'm going to apply orange to the stripes that still need some color. And the orange and the yellow will sort of bleed into each other. You can even apply a little bit over the yellow if you want. Like I might apply just a little bit of orange along the upper edge. It's up to you. You can see how that just sort of creates that, that gourd. And it was only by applying stripes using two colors. So this is really easy. And you're just letting it bleed wet into each other. I think this is a fun one. It's satisfying just painting on the stripes and seeing them blend into each other. And yellow and orange are right next to each other on the color wheels. So when they bleed and merge into each other, they'll just create a value that sort of lays in between the two colors. And it just works well together. And then I'm going to place just the tip of my brush into the dark brown. And I'm going to sort of paint on a broken line leading up to the crook neck part. And I'm also going to just paint on the bottom part of this particular squash. And then we will be ready to do our final touches to these squashes, and then also to paint on the lettering. So going back to this upper one, the very first thing I actually want to do is, I forgot to do this initially. There is a little bit of yellow that's on this particular squash, but we can do it now in the same way we did this one. So I'm going to put a little bit of yellow in my brush, and I'm just going to run it on the ivory part along the top of the squash and just sort of push it down just onto the ivory part. So you see, I'm just sort of like pushing it down, just a little bit of that yellow, and it will just sort of influence the khaki or the ivory color and just give it a little bit more color. It won't look as drab. And then how we're going to finish this one up is I'm just going to use, I'm going to start with the brown. I'm going to put just a little bit of brown on the tip of my brush, and just these two smaller indentations, the arches on the smaller indentations, I'm just going to go over those sections with a little bit of brown, just a couple drops of brown over the smaller arches or indentations. And then I'm going to use the brown also to just add a few more stripes to the stem. As few or as many as you want. It's up to you. You're not going to fully cover the ivory. You're not going to fully cover the green we previously applied. It's just going to add a little bit more detail and value. And then I will clean and blot my brush. And then to finish this gourd up, I'm going to put some more dark green on my brush. And I'm just going to apply a few more dots to the indentations. And these are going to be wet over dry. And so they're going to dry much more, I guess, harshly or with more definition. And that's because we let the first layer on the indentations dry before we're going over with another layer of the dark green. And we can keep with the dark green because we're actually going to use the dark green on the beach ball looking gourd. And we're going to do the same thing on the beach ball gourd. Is I'm going to take this green color, the dark green color. I'm just going to add a few more dashes and dots, wet over dry, to each of the dark green segments on this particular gourd. And it'll be wet over dry. So it will dry with a bit more definition than if we were doing wet over wet. So we're not trying to cover everything from the first layer, just adding a little bit more definition. And you could even do this a third time if you wanted. It's up to you. And then I also want to add a little bit of definition to the khaki ones. So I'm going to clean my brush. I'm going to blot it. I'm going to put some of that khaki color on my brush, and I'm going to do the same thing to the khaki segments. I'm just going to add a few dashes and dots. Oh, I cannot speak today, of the khaki to the lighter segments and give that a little bit of definition also. Like so. And as it dries, it'll look a bit more like this one, where you can see a little bit of the, see if I can get it to focus, a little bit of definition on those segments as it dries. And then the last touch on this one is I'm just going to apply a little bit more dark brown to the center stem. Might just like outline it and maybe do like a dot or dash through the middle. I don't want to fully cover it. I just want to give it a little bit more definition where the stem would be. And then you can clean and blot. And then we'll work on the mini pumpkin gourd. And this time we're just going to use the pumpkin orange. We have not used the pumpkin orange yet, so it might feel a little lonely. Maybe you didn't think we were going to get to it, but we're going to use the pumpkin orange on the pumpkin and also on the warty gourd. And so I'm going to put some pumpkin on my brush, and I'm going to apply it to all the indentations just as I did with the orange the first time around. So not to the far left edge, but just to the left of the next curved line, just to the left of the next one. And then we're going to switch to just to the right for the next two. And I'm once again going to apply a little bit to the center of the middle. And to help these lines more softly blend or transition into the orange color we applied initially, I'm not going to do the trick of placing my brush in the water and wiping it. I'm actually going to thoroughly clean my brush. I'm going to blot it lots of times on my paper towel. And then I'm just going to take my damp but not soaking wet brush, and I'm just going to run it loosely along the edge of where the pumpkin is. So that way it maintains its definition right where the indentation is, but then I can also sort of push it and create some texture to the surrounding segments. So I wanted to have a little bit more definition, which is why I'm not just using a diluted version of the orange. I'm just sort of pushing or moving the edge into the surrounding sections on this pumpkin. And you'll see how that does create quite a bit of texture by doing that. But we're not totally covering the orange this way either. So we kind of have some different values going on. And I love how the pumpkin looks. It's probably my favorite one. And then we can now also apply just a few lines of the dark green to the stem, as many or as little as you want. You can even just keep it the green if you like how the green looks. But since the other stems all have a couple colors going on with them, I'll go ahead and do it to this one as well. Just add a little bit of dark green lines over the lighter green. All right, so we have 10 minutes left, which is just enough time to finish this. So we're doing great on time. And we're gonna finish the warty squash now. And we're gonna use pumpkin again. So I'm gonna take some pumpkin, load up my brush with it. And to every single indentation, I'm just gonna place dots of pumpkin right over it. Just dot it all the way up each indentation. Just dot it, dot it, dot it, dot it. And then once you have that done with the pumpkin that's still on your brush, you can outline some of the warts. You can add a few more warts with the pumpkin color. This is just sort of creating a little bit of definition. I might outline a few of the side warts, but not all. I want some to still kind of be that, just the orange color, but some to have a little bit of pumpkin. It's really up to you how detailed you want to make these, and how many more warts you want to add, or how much you want to outline the warts that are still there from the previous layer. So I just did maybe half of the warts, outlined them in a bit of pumpkin, and maybe added 2 or 3 new warts using the pumpkin color, but I'll hold that up so you can see. So I like that one too. I think that's a cool effect. And then to finish up the crook neck squash, it's really fast and easy. Literally all I'm going to do is just add another layer, a little bit more dark brown to the bottom part of the gourd, just to sort of help it stand out, give it a little bit more definition. Not trying to cover everything from the first layer, just add a touch more brown to help it stand out a bit. And then we will be ready to paint on the lettering. So sometimes with the lettering, we do something fancy. We thicken the down strokes. But today we're just going to paint the lettering on all the same width. I mean, you can thicken your downstrokes if you want, but I'm just going to paint it on. You might find the number 4 brush is easier for you to do the lettering. I actually prefer the 8. I'm able to do it quicker and get a more consistent line. So it's totally up to you how you want to paint on the lettering. So I'm just going to use the tip of my 8, and honestly, I don't always do this, but I'm kind of holding my brush as if I were holding a pencil. And I'm just sort of breaking each letter up into sections and just sort of carefully painting around. If you have a marker, you might find a marker a lot easier than trying to paint on these letters with a brush. So I do think lettering takes work and takes practice. I don't know that it's like the easiest thing, because you kind of have to really have control and try to get everything the same thickness. So there is nothing wrong with using a marker. In fact, the watercolor class I'm teaching in 2 weeks, I'm going to show you a picture of that here in just a second. We are doing a little bit of lettering in that class, but we'll be using a watercolor marker to do the lettering. Really, it's because of time. The main project is going to take a little bit longer than what these gourds did. So to save a little bit of time in the class, we'll just use a marker. But you know, you can always use a marker if you want. There is nothing wrong with that. It's a little bit quicker, a little bit easier to control too. All right. And then we will be just about done. All right, so there's my lettering. And you can always go back over with another layer if you want. But the class I'm teaching in 2 weeks, October 26th, same time as this class, is this I Love You a Latte class. And it's a sepia toned latte or cappuccino, and it's a lot of fun. You'll learn some different textures, because we'll do a cinnamon stick and some coffee beans and foam designs. So I hope you'll be here for that. The signups are live on the Michaels website, so you can find it there. You can also go to my website. I have an upcoming classes section on my website where I list the link to the Michaels website directly, and you can just click on it and then you'll know where to sign up. And you can always follow me on social media too. My handle pretty much everywhere is @MandyPeltierArtist. And I'll keep you up to date on my classes and what I'm working on there as well. And you can kind of get a sneak peek of some of the classes I'm working on. I have switched gears now. I'm working on Christmas classes and just like winter holiday themed classes. So that is kind of fun. I always feel like I'm several months ahead because, you know, all these things have like early deadlines and stuff. So, but I would love to see your finished artwork if you were able to keep up with me. I'm going to switch to gallery view here so I can see everyone's artwork. So if you were able to like keep up with me, turn on your camera, show me your artwork. I see BJ's. That looks awesome. I love it. These look good. I mean, I say this in every class. I'm looking at like 2-inch big thumbnails. So all of yours look amazing, but I'd love to see a bigger image. You can always tag me on social media or even email me. I have a contact link on my website. You can email me and attach things there as well. But from what I'm seeing, these look amazing. Ooh, someone did graphite. They did shading. Patty, that looks awesome. Those look so realistic from what I can tell. Awesome, awesome, awesome job. All right. So I'm really happy to have spent this hour with you all. I hope you had fun. I hope you're enjoying the fall season. And I hope to see you, if not on Thursday night for the face painting class, in a couple weeks for my I Love You a Latte class. Have a good rest of your day.